Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. Pills caught in my throat. Pills caught in my throat. You'll have to excuse me. Mm. And of course, the dog decided he needed to go out 30 seconds before I was supposed to go live. That's just the way life is. So, all right, who do we have here? We got Survival. Yes, the real PM will show up. I am so sorry for the problems last week. Kidney stone. And then I put that up and I wasn't thinking very clearly because I was in a lot of pain. And thank God Lawrence covered for me. And, let y'all know that I was just putting that up as I'm not going to make it tonight. Not that I was going to talk about the kidney stone, but we can talk about the kidney stone if you want. So, oh man, Kevin is here. Hello, Kevin. Good to see you. And Shaman is here. Yay. Oh, you had a birthday? You turned 38 today? I could have had all my happy birthday stuff up for you. Oh, this is what I get for missing last week. So, Thank you, Shaman. So am I. The kidney stone is still with me, but it is now down in the lower part. It's like almost to the bladder. So I'm very, very happy about that. And so it should just be a few more days of it traversing to get to its final destination. And then I won't have to worry about the rock anymore. So, but happy birthday. Happy birthday. 38, you baby. Oh my gosh, only 38. Wow. You got good times ahead of you. Oh my gosh. So, Kevin says, good. Watched my paycheck disappear. I'm learning that having all your bills on the first means that one paycheck is used just for bills. Yes, absolutely. You're very, very welcome, Shaman. Oh, Survival. Yeah, it is Survival. I can read, but I'm reading things wrong. So, yes, Lawrence is here. Yay. Thank you again for letting everybody know, Lawrence. I really appreciate that. I mean, you keep in close touch with me, and it's so cool. You rescued me, telling everybody that I wasn't going to be live. Oh my gosh! So we are on the last bit of the book. We may even finish it tonight. Can you believe that? I mean, it's been 6 months, going on 7. And we've just got the last little bit left. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey with everyone, and I'm so grateful that people are still watching. Y'all have stuck it out, and you did a great job doing that. So I really appreciate it. So yeah, we've been talking about Michaela's disease. And how Tammy had accidentally administered 10 times the recommended dose of the first few injections, and poof, Michaela was fixed. A week after the trip to the zoo, she was zipping around playing Little League soccer. Tammy spent all her summer just watching her run. Oh my goodness. Did I get things screwed up? Wait. Oh, it is 30. It is Survival that turned 38. I thought it was Shaman. My poor brain. But yeah, very, very, you're very, very welcome. And if I had known, I would have put up all the balloons and streamers for you. So, yeah. And Survival says it's 100% understandable. Don't worry about missing a live. You always say that. You're so sweet to say that all the time, because I feel like I'm letting you guys down. And I hate to do that. I wish I was healthier, and able to just, grind it out. Like, yeah, my dad went to work, woke up 6 o'clock in the morning every single day, no problems, rain or shine. He was a machine. My sister, the same way. Me, not so much. I have my maternal grandmother's health where, she was just barely present for her kids' lives and stuff like that. So, Survival says, Pam, you'll have to figure something out new after this book. I know, my mom and I were talking about that. And we were trying to figure out what we should do, if we should dive into some Tolstoy, which might be a lot of fun, do a fiction book. And it's been, I've learned a heck of a lot. I'm glad I went through the actual book, not just listening to the music, but listening to the good meat of this. So yeah, Kevin, there is also JBP's other 12 rules. Yeah, we could go through that. I don't know. We'll have to see once we get to this and maybe have a little powwow, figure out what we want to do next. Survival says, no, Pam, you're good. You didn't screw up. You had it right. Oh, bless you. I tend to get very hard on myself for missing things, and it's from my upbringing, that Midwest work ethic, and the kids getting the what do you call it, the awards for perfect attendance and things like that. And it's like, no, they just had good enough immune systems to show up to school sick, and they made me sick in the process, So anyway, Shaman says, can't pour from an empty cup, Pam, so it's all very understandable to us. Glad you keep them going. Just glad you keep them going. Oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart. Bless all of your hearts. It's hard for me. I want to be able to participate all the time in all the obligations that I've made. It's not like I've made a lot of obligations. I've got my prayer on Wednesday. I've got, hi, Free. I've got my, live with you guys on Thursday, and then the one on Saturday as well. And, it's like, why can't I just keep those 3 obligations? It's so hard. Why is it so hard? I don't know. My life is so hard. But I'm not going to sit here and whine all night. So let's get to it. We wanted Michaela to control as much of her life as she could. What were we just talking about? She had always been strongly motivated by money. One day we found her outside, surrounded by the books of her early childhood, selling them to passersby. I sat her down one evening and told her that I would give her $50 if she could do the injection herself. She was 8. She struggled for 35 minutes, holding the needle close to her thigh. Then she did it. The next time I paid her $20, but only gave her 10 minutes. Then it's $10 and 5 minutes. We stayed at 10 for quite a while. It was a bargain. After a few years, Michaela became completely symptom-free. The rheumatologist suggested that we start weaning her off her medications. Some children grow out of JIA when they hit puberty. Nobody knows why. She began to take the methotrexate in pill form instead of injecting it. Things were looking good for 4 years. Then, one day, her elbow started to ache. We took her back to the hospital. You only have one actively arthritic joint, said the rheumatologist assistant. It wasn't only. 2 isn't much more than 1, but 1 is a lot more than 0. 1 meant that she hadn't grown out of her arthritis despite the hiatus. The news demolished her for months, but she was still in dance class and playing ball games with her friends on the street in front of our house. The rheumatologist had some more unpleasant things to say the next September when Michaela's Michaela started grade 11. An MRI revealed joint deterioration at the hip. She told Michaela, your hip will have to be replaced before you turn 30. Perhaps the damage had been done before the Internacept worked its miracle. We didn't know. It was ominous news. One day, a few weeks after, Michaela was playing hockey in her high school gym. Her hip locked up. She had to hobble off the court. It started to hurt more and more. The rheumatologist said, some of your femur appears to be dead. You don't need a hip replacement when you're 30. You need one now. Can you imagine that, being in 8th grade and needing a hip replacement? I mean, that's what old people get. That's not what you get when you're in grade 11. Sorry. So yeah, she must have been what, 16, 17? Ugh. So, oh hey, Latin Patriot is here. Yay! Good to see you. And who else is here? Did I miss somebody? MMSLO. Oh, gotcha. That's an acronym there. Yeah, hip replacement. That's rough. That's really rough. And before you're 20, I mean, I've seen what they have to do for hip replacements and how they have to, saw off the top of your femur and then they whack this metal thing in there, and sometimes that breaks the bone. It actually causes the bone to split and they have to put a wire around it. It's just awful. It's just awful. So I can't even imagine. As I sat with my client as she discussed her husband's advancing illness, we discussed the fragility of life, the catastrophe of existence, and the sense of nihilism evoked by the specter of death. I started with my thoughts about my son. She had asked, like everyone in her situation, why my husband? Why me? Why this? My realization of the tight interlinking between vulnerability and being was the best answer I had for her. I told her an old Jewish story, which I believe is part of the commentary on the Torah. It begins with the question, structured like a Zen koan. Imagine a being who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. What does such a being lack? The answer? Limitations. If you are already everything, everywhere, always, there is nowhere to go and nothing to be. Everything that could be already is, and everything that could happen already has. And for this reason, so the story goes, God created man. No limitation, no story. No story, no being. That idea has helped me deal with the terrible fragility of being. It helped my client too. I don't want to overstate the significance of this. I don't want to claim that this somehow makes it all okay. She faced the cancer afflicting her husband just as I still faced my daughter's terrible illness. But there's something to be said for recognizing that existence and limitation are inexorably linked. Though 30 spokes may form the wheel, it is the hole within the hub which gives the wheel utility. It is not the clay the potter throws which gives the pot its usefulness, but the space within the shape from which the pot is made. Without a door, the room cannot be entered. Without its windows, it is dark. Such is the utility of non-existence. Catch up on the comments here. Survival says, I think we all have a why me moment or moments in our lives. Yes, absolutely. Why now is another big one. When things seem to be just, catastrophes come on at the most inopportune moments. It's like, why now? Of all times, why now? There's that saying, when it rains, it pours. That kind of thing. So Yeah, all right. I'm caught up on comments. Uh, and yeah, and sometimes there is no answer at that moment. You may not know why now, why this, why me. You may not know, and it may be revealed. I mean, there's things in my life where I was just like, what? Why am I going through this? This suffering is extreme. This suffering should not be possible on this earth. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. This is ungodly. And I thought that's exactly what it was ungodly, not being from God. But as it turned out, it was something that became very, very useful much later on. Being able to uh, find my way to this kind of material and this kind of thing. Um, and, that suffering makes us humble, it makes us compassionate, all those sort of things. So, um, a realization of this sort emerged more recently in the pop culture world during the evolution of the DC Comics cultural icon Superman. Superman was created in 1938 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. In the beginning, he could move cars and trains and even ships. He could run faster than a locomotive. He could, quote, leap tall buildings in a single bound. As he developed over the next 4 decades, however, Superman's powers began to expand. By the late 60s, he could fly faster than light. He had super hearing and X-ray vision. He could blast heat rays from his eyes. He could freeze objects and generate hurricanes with his breath. He could move entire planets. Nuclear blast didn't faze him. And if he did get hurt, somehow he would immediately heal. Superman became invulnerable. Then a strange thing happened. He got boring. The more amazing his abilities became, the harder it was to think up interesting things for him to do. DC first overcame this problem in the 1940s. Superman became vulnerable to the radiation produced by kryptonite, a material remnant of his shattered home planet. Eventually, more than 24 variants emerged. Green kryptonite weakened Superman in a sufficient dosage, it could even kill him. Red caused him to behave strangely. Red-green caused him to mutate. He once grew a third eye on the back of his head. Other techniques were necessary to keep Superman's story compelling. In 1976, he was scheduled to battle Spider-Man. It was the first superhero crossover between Stan Lee's upstart Marvel Comics with its less idealized characters and DC, the owner of Superman and Batman. But Marvel had to augment Spider-Man's powers for the battle to remain plausible. That broke the rules of the game. Spider-Man is Spider-Man because he has the powers of a spider. If he is suddenly granted any old power, he's not Spider-Man. The plot falls apart. By the 1980s, Superman was suffering from terminal deus ex machina, a Latin term meaning God from the machine. The term described the rescue of the imperiled hero in ancient Greek and Roman plays by the sudden and miraculous appearance of an all-powerful god. In badly written stories, to this very day, a character in trouble can be saved or a failing plot redeemed by a bit of implausible magic or other chicanery not in keeping with the reader's reasonable expectations. Sometimes Marvel Comics, for example, saves a failing story in exactly this manner. Lifeguard, for example, is an X-Man character who can develop whatever power is necessary to save a life. He's very handy to have around. Other examples abound in popular culture. At the end of Stephen King's The Stand, for example, spoiler alert, God himself destroys the novel's evil characters. The entire ninth season, 1985 to 86, of the primetime soap Dallas was later revealed as a dream. I remember that scandal. Fans object to such things, and rightly so. They've been ripped off. People following a story are willing to suspend disbelief so long as the limitations making the story possible are coherent and consistent. Writers, for their part, agree to abide by their initial decisions. When writers cheat, fans get annoyed. They want to toss the book into the fireplace and throw a brick through the TV. And that became Superman's problem. He developed powers so extreme that he could deus himself out of anything at any time. In consequence, in the 1980s, the franchise nearly died. Artist-writer John Byrne successfully rebooted it, rewriting Superman, retaining his biography, but depriving him of many of his new powers. He could no longer lift planets or shrug off an H-bomb. He also became dependent on the sun for his powers, like a reverse vampire. He gained some reasonable limitations. A superhero who can do anything turns out to be no hero at all. Because nothing they do is heroic. What's heroic about, snapping your fingers and solving the equation? Heroes have to fight, There has to be a heroic battle for things to matter enough to make it a hero. So, a superhero who can do anything turns out to be no hero at all. He's nothing specific, so he's nothing. He has nothing to strive against, so he can't be admirable. Being of any reasonable sort appears to require limitation. Perhaps this is because being requires becoming as well as mere static existence. And to become is to become something more, or at least something different. That is only possible for something limited. Fair enough. But what about the suffering caused by such limits? Perhaps the limits required by being are so extreme that the whole project should just be scrapped. Dostoevsky expresses this idea very clearly in the voice of the protagonist of Notes from the Underground. So you see, you can say anything about world history, anything and everything that is the most morbid imagination can think of, except one thing, that is, it cannot be said that world history is reasonable. The world sticks in one's throat. Goethe's Mephistopheles, the adversary of being, announces his opposition explicitly to God's creation in Faust, as we have seen. Years later, Goethe wrote Faust Part 2. He has the devil repeat his credo in a slightly different form, just to hammer home the point. Gone to sheer nothing, past with no made one. What matters our creative endless toil when at a snatch oblivion ends the coil? It is bygone. How shall this riddle run? As good as if things had never had begun. Yet circle back existence to possess. I'd rather have eternal emptiness. Oh, I see it. Dave Krennic. Oh my goodness. Dave is in the house. Oh my gosh. And Rising Ability is here too? Wow, I miss these people coming in. Dave! Good to see you. I was thinking about you earlier this week. So I was hoping everything was going well with you. Dave says, had to step away from social media for my mental health. Been a rough 6 months. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it has been a rough 6 months for you. Are you flying again? Has that passed? Has the time for your pilot's license passed? And at least it's summertime, So, but glad you're back. Tell us how you're doing, man. It's Survival's birthday. He's 38 today, the youngin'. So tell him happy birthday. Good to see you. It's been so long, but hope your mental health has healed a little bit with your vacation. So, all right. Anyone could understand such words. When a dream collapses, a marriage ends, or a family member is struck down by a devastating disease, how can reality be structured so unbearably? How can this be? Perhaps, as the Columbine boys suggested, see Rule 6, it would be better not to be at all. Perhaps it would even be better if there was no being at all. But people who come to the former conclusion are flirting with suicide, and those who come to the latter with something worse, something truly monstrous. They're consorting with the idea of the destruction of everything. They are toying with genocide and worse. Even the darkest regions still have darker corners. And what is truly horrifying is that such conclusions are understandable, maybe even inevitable, although not inevitably acted upon. What is reasonable? What is the reasonable person to think when faced, for example, with a suffering child? It is not precisely the reasonable person, the compassionate person, who would find such thoughts occupying his mind. How could a good God allow such a world as this to exist? Logical they may be, understandable they might be, but there is a terrible catch to such conclusions. Actions taken in keeping with them, if not the thoughts themselves, inevitably serve to make a bad situation even worse. Hating life, despising life, even for the genuine pain that it inflicts, merely serves to make life itself worse, unbearably worse. There is no genuine protest in that. There is no goodness in that. Only the desire to produce suffering for the sake of suffering. That is the very essence of evil. People who come to that kind of thinking are one step from total mayhem. Sometimes they merely lack the tools. Sometimes, like Stalin, they have their finger on the nuclear button. But is there any coherent alternative given the self-evident horrors of existence? Can being itself, with its malarial mosquitoes, child soldiers, and degenerative neurological diseases, truly be justified? I'm not sure I could have formulated a proper answer to such a question in the 19th century, before the totalitarian horrors of the 20th century were monstrously perpetrated on millions of people. I don't know that it's possible to understand why such doubts are morally im- impermissible without the fact of the Holocaust and the Stalinist purges and Mao's catastrophic Great Leap Forward. And I also don't think it is possible to answer the question by thinking. Thinking leads inexorably to the abyss. It did not work for Tolstoy. It might not have even worked for Nietzsche, arguably through though more clear about such things than anyone in history. But if it is not thinking that can be relied upon in the direst situations, what is left? Thought, after all, is the highest of human achievements, is it not? Eh, perhaps not. Something supersedes thinking, despite its truly awesome power. When existence reveals itself as existentially intolerable, thinking collapses in on itself. Well, I've experienced that. In such situations in the depths, it is noticing, not thinking, that does the trick. Perhaps you might start by noticing this. When you love someone, it's not despite their limitations, it's because of their limitations. Of course, it's complicated. You don't have to be in love with every shortcoming and merely accept. You shouldn't stop trying to make life better or let suffering just be. But there appear to be limits on the path to improvement beyond which we might not want to go, lest we sacrifice our humanity itself. Of course, it's one thing to say being requires limitation and then to go about happily when the sun is shining and your father is free of Alzheimer's disease and your kids are happy and your marriage is happy. But when things go wrong, And that's the end of that section. So, um, Dave says, not 100%, but about 85%. So better from 50. Yeah, I'd say so. That is some huge improvement. Oh my gosh. Here's to you, sir. And here's to survival being 30, a babe of 38. So, survival says, victimhood. The left playing oppression Olympics. Who's worse off? Anyone not as good. Anyone not as good is your enemy. Crap. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of crap. Um, Survival says, I'm trying to keep up with the book and understand. Um, so it's the idea that you can't think your way out of a bad situation. You know, when the world is collapsing around your ears, thinking doesn't help. Because you just spin in your thoughts. Part of this is the way our mind is structured. When we have a problem that's plaguing us, our mind will just rehash all the times that this awful thing has happened before it in an effort to actually try and get out of the situation. But usually it just becomes, kind of this obsessive, morose thinking that goes on. Uh, the left has adopted fear as a virtue. Yes. If you aren't as scared as they are, then you aren't virtuous. It's freaking bad. I don't know if you guys know about the Bo Burnham special Inside. Um, there's this wonderful song that he does where he says, you know, don't be scared, don't be shy, come on in, the water's fine. And then the other person says, you say the ocean's rising, and his answer is, like I give a shit. And it's that obsessive, let's be afraid of everything sort of thing. People are going to get tired of that, you know. People are going to get real tired of that because it's just exhausting, It's just absolutely exhausting. Uh, Dave says, survival. I hope that Gwen Berry and the trans biker get kicked off the teams for Olympics. If you don't like the U.S., then you can leave and not be an athlete for the U.S. Yes. Yes. Different gnome. Hey, different gnome. Says Machiavellian thinking. Yes. Yes. And then, so we already are, Pam. Yeah. Well, we were sick of it when they started it. We were like, what are you guys doing? Playing this victim Olympics, saying that the world's going to end if we don't all amend our ways, saying, oh, we need this high-speed train because cars are so awful and so polluting. But when they go to build the high-speed train, no, you can't build the high-speed train because you're ruining the environment to build the high-speed train. It's like, choose one. You can't have it both ways, and this idea that people want to preserve the world, they want to just fix it where it is right there at that moment, that oh, we're losing this much rainforest and whatever, and we're losing that. I mean, God help me, I mourn the loss of the orangutans and the impact that we're having on all the different species and things like that. But I have my own problems to deal with. I can't be worried about everything going on. You get overwhelmed. It just becomes noise. It's like, yes, things suck. What are you going to do about it? You're going to take care of what you can take care of in your life and leave other people to sort out the other problems and things like that. Like, the reason why we're losing the rainforest is for palm oil, to go in all these foods that we have. And all this palm oil, is because, trans fats are bad for you, sort of thing. And it's like, we've had, but I mean, do you want to worry about what's in the Oreo that makes it taste good, or do you want to kill off the orangutans? It's like, so, um, different gnome says, you can rent your cake but can't eat it, right? So, yeah, survival says people do get sick of it. Yeah, absolutely. And so oxymoronic. Yeah. Dave says most people don't realize that an electric car pollutes the environment worse than a gas car. Exactly. The open strip mines that we have to do for the cobalt, for the batteries and everything. I mean, it's just, there you can't walk around trying to not step on every ant and trying to preserve every blade of grass out there. It's just not going to be possible. So you got to pick your battles, and your values. And it's like, my values are my values, and I don't care about your, I feel bad about, some of the things that we're doing to the environment, but other things, it's like, it's a little much. It's a little much. So, an electric car has a higher carbon footprint. Yep, 3 times more than 3 times. That's 300%. And people don't realize that they're being all, virtuous in their Prius and their hybrid cars and everything like that. And it's like, oh my gosh. You're doing exactly the opposite of what you claim, and it's we've got the victim Olympics and the virtue Olympics. Those are the 2 games right now, and a lot of people just don't want to play. Just are tired of playing. We got bigger things to deal with. And a lot of it is just so that people can manipulate and have control over your life. Oh, you need to do this. Says who? Are you my parent? Are you my doctor? Need to? Who are you? So, and people get pissed off when you won't buy into their cult of whatever crusade it is that they have that day. So I liked it better when we, said it's, other people's business is other people's business. Anyway, disintegration and pain. Michaela stayed awake many nights when she was in pain. Yep, I know that. When her grandfather came to visit, he gave her a few of his Tylenol 3s, which contained codeine. Then she could sleep, but not for long. A rheumatologist instrumental in producing Michaela's remission hit the limit of her courage when we were dealing with our child's pain. She had once prescribed opiates to a young girl who became addicted. She swore never to do this again. She said, "Have you tried ibuprofen?" Oh my gosh. Just because you have one bad experience does not mean the other 99 are going to have the same experience. But I know doctors just like this. Michaela learned then that doctors don't know everything. Ibuprofen for her was like a crumb of bread for a starving man. It's a good analogy. I'm going to mark that page. We talked to a new doctor. He listened carefully. Then he helped Michaela. First, he prescribed T3s, the same medication her grandfather had briefly shared. This was brave. Physicians face a lot of pressure to avoid prescription of opioids, not least to children. But opioids work. Soon, however, the Tylenol was insufficient. She started taking OxyContin, an opiate known pejoratively as hillbilly heroin. This controlled her pain, but produced other problems. Tammy took Michaela out for lunch a week after the prescription started. She could have been drunk. Her speech was slurred, her head nodded. This was not good. My sister-in-law is a palliative care nurse. Ooh, that's a nice person to have in the family. She thought we could add Ritalin, an amphetamine often used for a hyperactive kid, to the OxyContin. The Ritalin restored Michaela's alertness and had some pain-suppressing qualities of its own. This is true. Amphetamines suppress pain. This is a very good thing to know if you are ever faced with somebody's intractable suffering. But her pain became increasingly excruciating. She started to fall. Then her hip seized up on her again, this time in the subway on a day when the escalator was not working. Her boyfriend carried her up the stairs. She took a cab home. The subway was no longer a reliable form of transportation. That's another thing people don't realize is, yeah, people may be driving cars because they can't walk. Sorry. That March, we bought Michaela a 50cc motor scooter. It was dangerous to let her ride it. It was also dangerous for her to lack all freedom. We chose the former danger. She passed her learner's exam, which allowed her to pilot the vehicle during the day. She was given a few months to progress towards her permanent license. In May, her hip was replaced. The surgeon was even able to adjust for a pre-existent half-centimeter difference in leg length. The bone hadn't died either. That was only a shadow on the x-ray. Her aunt and her grandparents came to see her. We had some better days. Immediately after the surgery, however, Michaela was placed in an adult rehabilitation center. She was the youngest person in the place by about 60 years. Her aged roommate, very neurotic, wouldn't allow the lights to be off even at night. The old woman couldn't make it to the toilet and had to use a bedpan. She couldn't stand to have the door of her room closed, but it was right beside the nurse's station with its continual alarm bells and loud conversations. There was no sleeping there where sleep was required. No visitors were allowed after 7 p.m. The physio, the very reason for her placement, was on vacation. The only person who helped her was the janitor, who volunteered to move her to a multi-bed ward where she told the on-duty nurse that she couldn't sleep. This was the same nurse who had laughed when she found out which room Michaela's had been assigned to. She was supposed to be there for 6 weeks. She was there 3 days. When the vacationing physio returned, Michaela climbed the rehab center stairs and immediately mastered her additional required exercises. While she was doing that, we outfitted our home with the necessary handrails. Then we took her home. All that pain and surgery, she handled that fine. The appalling rehab center, that produced post-traumatic stress symptoms. And I'm not surprised. Most people who have a chronic illness have medical PTSD just because of the stuff that they're put through. And the attitude of a lot of the healthcare workers these days. I mean, all sorts of nurturing and compassion is just gone, absolutely gone. It's frightening. So, yeah, not, going back to the electric cars, not to mention the coal the electric company has to burn in order to fuel the car. Yeah, exactly. Dave says, I'm outies. Have a great night. Just wanted to let everyone know I'm still kicking. Yay! I'll try and stop by more often. Night all. Good night, David. It was good to see you. I am glad you're still around and alive and kicking and all of that. And so get that 85% up as high as you can, 88%, 90%, 95%. You will get there, sir. And I'm so proud of you for going through all this. So, yeah, you have a good night, and we will see you later. All right, back to the PTSD of the rehab ward. Michaela enrolled in a full-fledged motorcycle course in June so that she could continue legally using her scooter. We were all terrified by this necessity. What if she fell? What if she had an accident? On the first day, Michaela trained on a real motorcycle. It was heavy. She dropped it several times. She saw another beginning rider tumble and roll across the parking lot where the course was held. On the morning of the second day of the course, she was afraid to return. She didn't want to leave her bed. We talked for a good while and jointly decided that she should at least drive back with Tammy to the site where the training took place. If she couldn't manage it, she could stay in the car until the course finished. En route, her courage returned. When she received her certificate, everyone else enrolled stood and applauded. Then her right ankle disintegrated. Her doctors wanted to fuse the large affected bones into one piece, but that would have caused the other smaller bones in her foot, now facing additional pressure, to deteriorate. So that's not so intolerable, perhaps, when you're 80, although it's no picnic either, but it's no solution when you're in your teens. We insisted on an artificial replacement, although the technology was new. There was a 3-year waiting list. This was simply not manageable. The damaged ankle produced much more pain than her previously failing hip. One bad night, she became erratic and illogical. I couldn't calm her down. I knew that she was at her breaking point. To call that stressful is to say almost nothing. We spent weeks and then months desperately investigating all sorts of replacement devices, trying to assess their suitability. We looked everywhere for a quicker surgery. India, China, Spain, the UK, Costa Rica, Florida. We contacted the Ontario Provincial Ministry of Health. They were very helpful. They located a specialist across the country in Vancouver. Michaela's ankle was replaced in November. Post-surgery, she was an absolute glory. Oh, she was in absolute agony. I misread that. Her foot was mispositioned. The cast was compressing skin against bone. The clinic was unwilling to give her enough OxyContin to control her pain. Oh my gosh. She built up a high level of tolerance because of her previous use. When she returned home in less pain, Michaela started to taper off the opiates. She hated OxyContin despite its evident utility. She said that it turned her life gray. Perhaps that was a good thing under the circumstances. She stopped using it as soon as possible. She suffered through the withdrawals for months, the night sweating and the formication, the sensation of ants crawling upside down under her skin. She became unable to experience any pleasure. That was another effect of the opioid withdrawal. During much of this period, we were overwhelmed. The demands of everyday life don't stop just because you've been laid low by a catastrophe. Everything that you always do still has to be done. So how do you manage? How do you manage? Here are some of the things we learned. Set aside some time to talk and to think about the illness, other crisis, and how it should be managed every day. Do not talk or think about it otherwise. If you do not limit its effect, you will become exhausted and everything will spiral into the ground. This is not helpful. Conserve your strength. You are in a war, not a battle, and a war is composed of many battles. You must stay functional through all of them. When worries associated with the crisis arise at other times, remind yourself that you will work through them during the scheduled period. This usually works. The parts of your brain that generate anxiety are more interested in the fact that there is a plan than in the details of the plan. Don't schedule your time to think in the evening or at night. Then you won't be able to sleep. If you can't sleep, then everything will rapidly go downhill. Shift the unit of time you use to frame your life. When the sun is shining and times are good and the crops are bountiful, you can make your plans for the next month, the next year, and the next 5 years. You can even dream a decade ahead, but you can't do that when your leg is clamped firmly in a crocodile's jaws. Quote, sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof. That is Matthew 6:34. It is often interpreted as live in the present without a care for tomorrow. That is not what that means. The injunction must be interpreted in the context of the Sermon on the Mount, of which it is an integral part. That sermon distills the 10 thou shalt nots of the commandments of Moses into a single prescriptive thou shalt. Christ enjoins his followers to place faith in God's heavenly kingdom and the truth. That's a conscious decision to presume the primary goodness of being. That's an act of courage. Aim high like Pinocchio's Geppetto. Wish upon a star and then act properly in accordance with that aim. Once you are aligned with the heavens, you can concentrate on the day. Be careful. Put the things that you can control in order. Repair what is in disorder and make what is already good better. It is possible that you can manage if you're careful. People are very tough. People can survive through much pain and loss. But to persevere, they must see the good in being. If they lose that, they're truly lost. So speaking of the coal technology connections, we talked about gaslighting, like the actual gas, and how the coal gas was pumped into the houses. It was used like electricity before electricity took off. Yep. Survival says, oh my goodness, that's terrible, right? And you must keep pushing yourself forward. Absolutely. There was one thing that I learned early on in my condition, and that is hope can be a liability when you're going through something like this, because I would always hope that the next pill, the next medication, the next treatment, the next whatever would be the thing that solved my problems. And often it wasn't. In fact, every medication, every treatment on the market at that time, and pretty much still to this day, I have tried with all of them, and they all failed, or I had a bad reaction to them, or they would work for a little while and then they wouldn't. And it became very, very hard to hope that the next thing would be it. It would be just one roller coaster of devastation after another, and it got so that I couldn't hope without triggering that feeling that it was all going to be devastating, in just a little bit. And I couldn't be on that roller coaster anymore. I could not handle it. Yes, this is going to be the answer. No, it's not the answer. Oh, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So I just learned tenacity, and that doesn't matter if it works or it doesn't work. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going and just put one foot in front of the other, dig my heels in, whatever I have to do, and just get through. And, that was a lot easier to handle on a day-to-day basis than to try and hope something would work. So, hey, DC, listening while driving home from work. I'm glad you're here. Stay safe. Eyes on the road. So, oh my gosh. And the fireworks have started, so now my poor doggy's going to be scared. So, yes, tenacity. Survival never goes out of style. Exactly. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Oh, hey, Honey Barbecue Wings is here. Nice to see you. Survival never goes out of style. All right. Dogs again, but finally cats. Dogs are like people. They are the friends and allies of human beings. They are social, hierarchical, and domesticated. They are happy at the bottom of the family pyramid. They pay for the attention they receive with loyalty, admiration, and love. Dogs are great. Cats, however, are their own creatures. They aren't social or hierarchical, except in passing. They are only semi-domesticated. Actually, they domesticated themselves. We didn't domesticate them at all. They They decided they wanted to be and domesticated themselves. They don't do tricks. That's not true. They are friendly on their own terms. Yeah, but so's my dachshund. Sorry, I'll stop. um, Dogs have been tamed, but cats have made a decision. Yes. Yes. They appear willing to interact with people for some strange reason of their own. To me, cats are a manifestation of nature, being almost in pure form. Furthermore, they are a form of being that looks at human beings and approves. When you meet a cat on the street, many things can happen. If I see a cat at a distance, for example, the evil part of me wants to startle it with a loud sound from my front teeth over my bottom lip. That will make a nervous cat puff up its fur and stand sideways so that it looks larger. Maybe I shouldn't laugh at cats, but it's hard to resist. The fact that they can be startled is one of the best things about them, along with the fact that they are instantly disgruntled and embarrassed by their overreaction. But when I have myself under proper control, I'll bend down and call the cat over so I can pet it. Sometimes it will run away. Sometimes it will ignore me completely because it's cat. But sometimes the cat will come over to me and push its head against my waiting hand and be pleased about it. Sometimes it will even roll over and arch its back against dusty concrete, although cats positioned in this manner will often bite and claw even a friendly hand. Across the street on which I live is a cat named Ginger. Ginger is a Siamese, a beautiful cat, very calm and self-possessed. She is low in the Big Five personality trait of neuroticism, which is an index of anxiety, fear, and emotional pain. Ginger is not at all bothered by dogs. Our dog, Sicko, is her friend. Sometimes when you call her, sometimes of her own accord, Ginger will trot across the street, tail head high, with a little kink at the end. Then she will roll her back in front of Sicko, who wags his tail happily as a consequence. Afterwards, if she feels like it, she might come visit you for half a minute. It's a nice break. It's a little extra light on a good day and a tiny respite on a bad day. If you pay careful attention even on a bad day, you might be fortunate enough to be confronted with small opportunities of just that sort. Maybe you will see a little girl dancing on the street because she's all dressed up in a ballet costume. Maybe you will have a particularly good cup of coffee in a cafe that cares about their customers. Maybe you can steal 10 or 20 minutes to do little ridiculous things that distract you or remind you that you can laugh at the absurdity of existence. Personally, I like to watch The Simpsons episode at 1.5 times regular speed. All the laughs, 2/3 the time. And maybe when you're going for a walk and your head is spinning, a cat will show up, and if you pay attention to it, and then you will get a little reminder for just 15 seconds that the wonder of being might make up for the ineradicable suffering that accompanies it. Pet a cat when you encounter it in the street. P.S. Soon after I wrote this chapter, Michaela's surgeon told her that her artificial ankle would have to be removed and her ankle fused. Amputation waited down that road. She had been in pain for 8 years since the replacement surgery, and her mobility remained significantly impaired, although both were much better than before. 4 days later, she happened upon a new physiotherapist. He was a large, powerful, attentive person and had specialized in ankle treatment in the UK, in London. He placed his hands around the ankle and compressed it for 40 seconds while Michaela moved her foot back and forth. A mispositioned bone slipped back where it belonged. Her pain disappeared. She never cries in front of medical personnel, but she burst into tears. Her knees straightened up. Now she can walk long distances and trapeze around in her bare feet. The calf muscle on her damaged leg is growing back. She has had much more flexion in the artificial joint. This year she married and had a baby girl, Elizabeth, named after my wife's departed mother. Things are good for now. And that is the end of the book. There's a coda here that we may want to cover, but let's do our smoke and bathroom break. So Lawrence says, yeah, my kitty is very sociable and friendly. Right, and a lot of cats are. He snuggles with me in bed every night. He is so soft and cuddly like a teddy bear. Yeah. I've had a lot of cats like that. Kevin says, I have to watch the YouTube shop teacher, Mr. Peel, on 2x speed. Yep. Survival says, oh, what a great story. And Shaman says, we made it. Yes, we did. We made it all the way through the book. So, yep, intermission time. I will leave you with this song for a moment. Where are we? We are right here.
My daughter was very ill. She had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and when she was between the ages of 14 and 16, it first destroyed her hip, which had to be replaced, and then it destroyed the ankle on her other leg, which had to be replaced. She walked around for 2 years on broken legs, and she was taking massive doses of opiates and could hardly stay awake, and she had this advanced autoimmune disease, which produced all sorts of other symptoms that were just as bad as the joint degeneration, but which are harder to describe. And so it's just bloody brutal. You know, and as a test of your faith, there's almost nothing that's more direct than a serious illness inflicted upon an innocent child. But what to do in a situation like that? Because everyone is going to have a situation like that in some sense. You know, you'll be faced with illness and the people that you love. And one of the things you do when you're overwhelmed by crisis is you shorten your time frame. You can't think about next month. Maybe you can't even bloody well think about next week, or maybe not even tomorrow, because now is just so overwhelming that that's all there is. And that's what you do. You cut your time frame back until you can cope with it. And if it's not the next week that you see how to get through, then it's the next day. And if it's not the next day, then it's the next hour. And if it's not the next hour, then it's the next minute. And you know, people are very, very, very tough. And it turns out that if you face things, you can put up with a lot more than you think you can put up with, and you can do it without becoming corrupt. And she did recover because she figured out what was wrong with her and then took the necessary steps to fix it. Which is nothing short of a bloody miracle. You have to be alert when you're suffering. You have to be alert to the beauty in life, the unexpected beauty in life. There's this cat that lives across the street from us called Ginger. Cats really aren't domesticated, technically speaking. They're still wild animals, but they kind of like people. God only knows why, but they do, you know. And so Ginger will come wandering over and let you pet her. You know, you have to look for that little bit of sparkling crystal in the darkness when things are bad. You have to look and see where things are still beautiful. You narrow your time frame. You be grateful for what you have. That can get you through some very dark times, and maybe even successfully if you're lucky. But even if unsuccessfully, then maybe it's only tragic and not absolute hell. You can do that, you know, in the worst situation. You can make it only tragic and not hell. There's nothing worse at a deathbed than to see the people there fighting. The death is bad enough, but you can take that, as terrible as it is, and make it into something that's absolutely unbearable. And maybe I think, and this is sort of what I closed the book with, if we didn't all attempt to make terrible things even worse than they are, then maybe we could tolerate terrible things that we have to put up with in order to exist. And maybe we could make the world into a better place, you know? And it's what we should be doing and what we could be doing because we don't have anything better to do. And that's what the book is about. And That's the end of 12 Rules for Life. Thank you.
All right, and we are back. So there's a coda here. I don't know if y'all do you want to go through this? It's called A Pen of Light, and it'll get us through the next hour easily. So we can go ahead and read that, or just hang out and talk. So put a 1 in the chat if you want to continue. It's humid here, so my pain is a little bit more than I would like it to be. That's for sure. Oh, yep. All right, Kevin says the Pen of Light is worth going through. I will take your advice then and go. Survival says 1, but I can't hang for an hour. That's fine. Lawrence says 1. Shaman says 1. All right. So votes are in. We will do it. What shall I do with my newfound Pen of Light? In late 2016, I traveled to Northern California to meet a friend and a business associate. We spent an evening together thinking and talking. At one point, he took a pen from his jacket and took a few notes. It was an LED equipped and beamed light out of its tip so that writing in the dark was made easier. Just another gadget, I thought. Later, however, in a more metaphorical frame of mind, I was struck quite deeply by the idea of a pen of light. There's something symbolic about it, something metaphysical. We're all in the dark, after all, much of the time. We could all use something written with a light to guide us along our way. I told him I wanted to do some writing while we sat and conversed, and I asked him if he would give me the pen as a gift. When he handed it over, I found myself inordinately pleased. Now I could write illuminated words in darkness. Obviously, it was important to do such a thing properly. So I said to myself in all seriousness, what shall I do with my newfound pen of light? There are 2 verses in the New Testament that pertain to such things. I've thought about them for a lot. Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. This is Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 8. At first glance, this seems like nothing but a testament to the magic of prayer in the sense of entreating God to grant favors. But God, whatever or whoever he may be, is no simple granter of wishes. When tempted by the devil himself in the desert, as we saw in Rule 7, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Even Christ himself is not willing to call upon his Father for a favor. Furthermore, every day the prayers of desperate people go unanswered. But maybe this is because the questions they contain are not phrased in the proper manner. Perhaps it's not reasonable to ask God to break the rules of physics every time we fall by the wayside or make a serious effort. Perhaps in such times you can't put the cart before the horse and simply wish for your problem to be solved in some magical manner. Perhaps you could ask instead what you might have to do right now to increase your resolve, buttress your character, and find the strength to go on. Perhaps instead ask to seek the truth. On many occasions in our nearly 30 years of marriage, my wife and I have had a disagreement, sometimes a deep disagreement. Our unity appeared to be broken at some unknowably profound level, and we were not able to easily resolve the rupture by talking. We became trapped instead in emotional, angry, and anxious argument. We agreed that when such circumstances arose, we would separate briefly, she to one room, me to another. This was often quite difficult because it is hard to disengage in the heat of an argument. But when anger generates the desire, but when anger generates the desire to defeat and win. But it seemed better than risking the consequences of a dispute that threatened to spiral out of control. Alone, trying to stay calm, we would each ask ourselves the same single question. What had we done to contribute to the situation we were arguing about? However small, however distant, we had each made some error. Then we would reunite and share the results of our questioning. Here's how I was wrong. The problem with asking yourself such a question is that you must truly want the answer. And the problem with doing that is that you won't like the answer. When you are arguing with someone, you want to be right and you want the other person to be wrong. Then it's them that has to sacrifice something and change, not you. And that's much preferable. If it's you that's wrong and you that must change, then you have to reconsider yourself, your memories of the past, your manner of being in the present, and your plans for the future. Then you must resolve to improve and figure out how to do that. Then you actually have to do it. That's exhausting. It takes repeated practice to instantiate the new perceptions and to make the new actions habitual. It's much easier just not to realize, admit, and engage. It's much easier to turn your attention away from the truth and remain willfully blind. But it's at such a point that you must decide whether you want to be right or you want to have peace. You must decide whether to insist upon the absolute correctness of your view or to listen and negotiate. You won't get peace by being right. You just get to be right, while your partner gets to be wrong, defeated and wrong. Do that 10,000 times and your marriage will be over, or you will wish it was. Choose the alternative, to seek peace. You have to decide that you want the answer more than you want to be right. That's the way out of the prison of your stubborn preconceptions. That's the prerequisite for negotiation. That's to truly abide by the principles of Rule 2. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. My wife and I learned that if you ask yourself such a question and you are genuinely desire the answer, no matter how disgraceful and terrible and shameful, then a memory of something you did that was stupid and wrong at some point in the generally not too distant enough past will arise from the depths of your mind. Then you can go back to your partner and reveal why you're an idiot and apologize sincerely. And that person can do the same for you and then apologize sincerely. And then you two idiots will be able to talk again. Perhaps that is a true prayer. The question, what have I done wrong, and how now to set things at least a little bit more right. But your heart must be open to the terrible truth. You must be receptive to that which you do not want to hear. When you decide to learn about your faults so that they can be rectified, you open a line of communication with the source of all revelatory thought. Maybe that's the same thing as consulting your conscience. Maybe that's the same thing in some manner as a discussion with God. It was in that spirit, with some paper in front of me, that I asked myself the question, what shall I do with my newfound pen of light? I asked as if I truly wanted to answer. The answer. I waited for a reply. I was holding a conversation between two different elements of myself. I was genuinely thinking or listening in the same sense described in Rule 9. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something that you don't. That rule can apply as much to yourself as to others. It was me, of course, who asked the question, and it was me, of course, who replied. But those two me's are not the same. I did not know what the answer would be. I was waiting for it to appear in the theater of my imagination. I was waiting for the words to spring out of the void. How can a person think up something that surprises him? How can he already not know what he thinks? Where do new thoughts come from? Who or what thinks them? Since I had just been given of all things a pen of light which could write illuminated words in the darkness, I wanted to do the best thing I could with it. So I asked the appropriate question, and almost immediately an answer revealed itself. Write down the words you want inscribed on your soul. I wrote that down. That seemed pretty good. A little on the romantic side, granted, but that was in keeping with the game. Then I upped the ante. I decided to ask myself the hardest questions I could think of and await their answers. If you have a pen of light, after all, you should use it to answer difficult questions, with a capital D and a capital Q. Here was the first. What shall I do tomorrow? The answer came, the most good possible in the shortest period of time. That was satisfying as well, conjoining an ambitious aim with the demands of maximal efficiency, a worthy challenge. The second question was in the same vein. What shall I do next year? Try to ensure that the good I do will then be exceeded only by the good I do the year after that. That seems solid too. A nice extension of the ambitions detailed by the previous answer. I told my friend that I was trying a serious experiment in writing with the pen he had given me. I asked if I could read aloud what I had composed so far. The questions and the answers struck a chord with him, too. The next question ended the first set. What shall I do with my life? Aim for paradise and concentrate on today. Ha! I knew what that meant. It's what Geppetto does in Disney's movie Pinocchio when he wishes upon the stars. The grandfatherly woodcarver lifts up his eyes to the twinkling diamond set high above the mundane world of day-to-day human concerns and articulates his deepest desire, that the marionette he created lose the strings by which he is manipulated by others and transform himself into a real boy. It's also the central message of the Sermon on the Mount, as we saw in Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, but which deserves repeating here. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field and how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothed the grains of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall not much more clothe ye, O ye of little faith? Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew chapter 6, 28 through 33. What does all of that mean? Orient yourself properly. Then, and only then, concentrate on the day. Set your sights at the good, the beautiful, and the true, and then focus pointedly and carefully on the concerns of each manner. Aim continually at heaven while you work diligently on earth. Attend fully to the future in that manner while attending fully to the present. Then you have the best chance of perfecting both. I turned then from the use of my time to my relationships with people and wrote down and then read these questions and answers to my friend. What shall I do with my wife? Treat her as if she is the Holy Mother of God, so that she may give birth to the world redeeming hero. What shall I do with my daughter? Stand behind her, listen to her, guard her, train her mind, and let her know it's okay if she wants to be a mother. What shall I do with my parents? Act such that your actions justify the suffering they endured. What shall I do with my son? Encourage him to be a true son of God. To honor your wife as a mother of God is to notice and support the sacred elements of her role as mother, not just of your children, but as such. A society that forgets this cannot survive. Hitler's mother gave birth to Hitler, and Stalin's mother to Stalin. Was something amiss in their crucial relationships? It seems likely, given the importance of the maternal role in establishing trust, to take a single vital example, perhaps the importance of their motherly duties and of their relationship with their children was not properly stressed. Perhaps what the women were doing in their maternal guise was not properly regarded by husband, father, and society alike. Actually, I know that Stalin's dad used to beat the crap out of him. Who instead might a woman produce if she was treated properly, honorably, and carefully? After all, the fate of the world rests on new infant, tiny, fragile, and threatened, but in time capable of uttering words and doing deeds that maintain the eternal, delicate balance between chaos and order. To stand behind my daughter? That's to encourage her in everything she wants to courageously do, but to include in that general appreciation the fact of her femininity, to recognize the importance of having a family and children, and to forego the temptation to degenerate or devalue that in comparison to accomplishment of personal ambition or career. It is not for nothing that the Holy Mother and infant is a divine image, as we discussed. Societies that cease to honor that image, that cease to see the relationship as of transcendent fundamental importance, also cease to be. To act just to justify the suffering of your parents is to remember that all the sacrifices that all the others who lived before you, not least your parents, have made for you in all the course of the terrible paths, to be grateful for all the progress that is thereby made, and then to act in accordance with that remembrance and gratitude. Perhaps people sacrificed immensely to bring about what we have now. In many cases, they literally died for it, and we should act with some respect for that fact. To encourage my son to be a true son of God, that is to want him above all to do what is right and to strive to have his back while he is doing so. That is, I think, part of the sacrificial message, to value and support your son's commitment to transcendent good above all things, and including his worldly progress, so to speak, and his safety, and perhaps even his life. I continued asking questions. The answers came within seconds. What shall I do with the stranger? Invite him into my house and treat him like a brother so that he may become one. That is to the extent the hand of trust to someone so that his or her best part can step forward and reciprocate. That's to manifest the sacred hospitality that makes life between those who do not yet know each other possible. What shall I do with a fallen soul? Offer a genuine and cautious hand, but do not join in the mire. That's a good summary of what we covered in Rule 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. That's an injunction to refrain both from the casting of pearls before swine and from camouflaging your vice with virtue. What shall I do with the world? Conduct myself as if being is more valuable than non-being. Act so that you are not made bitter and corrupt by the tragedy of existence. That's the essence of Rule 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Confront the uncertainty of the world voluntarily and with faith and courage. How shall I educate people? Share with them the things that I regard as truly important. That's Rule 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That is to aim for wisdom, to distill that wisdom into words, and to speak forth those words as if they matter, with true concern and care. That's all relevant as well to the next question and answer. What shall I do with a torn nation? Stitch it back together with careful words of truth. The importance of this injunction has, if anything, become clearer over the past few years. We are dividing and polarizing and drifting towards chaos. It is necessary under such conditions, if we are to avoid catastrophe, for each of us to bring forward the truth as we see it, not the arguments that justify our ideologies, and not the machinations that further our ambitions, but the stark, pure fact of our existence, revealed for others to see and contemplate, so that we can find common ground to proceed together. I'm going to look at the comments here. Everybody's listening intently. Shaman says, I have read or heard about that. It's not about Stalin's fathers as well. Yeah. Kevin says, casting pearls before swine. I keep forgetting that one, right? And it's easy to. Shaman says, I'm looking forward to going back over the book again. That'll be interesting for you. We always pick up more things the more times around we do them. So what shall I do for God my Father? Sacrifice everything I hold dear to yet greater perfection. Let the dead wood burn off so that new growth can prevail. That's the terrible lesson of Cain and Abel, detailed in the discussion of meaning surrounding Rule 7. What shall I do with a lying man? Let him speak so that he may reveal himself. Rule 9. Listen. Rule 9, listen, is once again relevant here, as is another section of the New Testament. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorn or figs of thistles? Even so, the good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. That's Matthew chapter 7, verses 16 through 20. The rot must be revealed before something sound can be put in its place, as was also indicated in Rule 7's elaboration. And all of this is pertinent to understanding the following question and answer. How shall I deal with the enlightened man, or the enlightened one? Replace him with the true seeker of enlightenment. There is no enlightened one. There is only one who is seeking further enlightenment. Proper being is a process, not a state, a journey, not a destination. It is the continual transformation of what you know through the encounter with what you don't know, rather than the desperate clinging to the certainty that is eternally insufficient in any case. That accounts for the importance of Rule 4, compare yourself. Always place your becoming above your current being. That means it is necessary to recognize and accept your insufficiency so that it can be continually rectified. That's painful, certainly, but it's a good deal. The next few Q&As made another coherent group. I focused this time on ingratitude. What shall I do when I despise what I have? Remember those who have nothing and strive to be grateful. That's a powerful one. You can always be jealous of the person who is up one more rung from where you are. I mean, there's so much to be jealous about of other people, but that's not being grateful for what we have. If we take what we have for granted, we will feel like we have nothing when we truly do have stuff, and we won't have the appropriate compassion for people who have less or nothing. um, if we're not able to be grateful for what's in our life. So, take stock of what is right in front of you. Mhm. Uh, Consider Rule 12, somewhat tongue in cheek. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Consider as well that you may be blocked in your progress because you lack, not because you lack opportunity, but because you have been too arrogant to make full use of what it already lies in front of you. That's Rule 6. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. I spoke recently with a young man about such things. He had barely ever left his family and never left his home state, but he journeyed to Toronto to attend one of my lectures and meet me at my home. He had isolated himself far too severely in the short course of his life to date and was badly plagued by anxiety. When we first met, he could hardly speak. He nonetheless had determined in the last year to do something about all of that. He started by taking on the lowly job of a dishwasher. He decided to do it well, and when he could have treated it contemptuously. Intelligent enough to be embittered by a world that did not recognize his gifts, he decided instead to accept with the genuine humility that is the true precursor to wisdom whatever opportunity he could find. Now he lives on his own. That's better than living at home. Now he has some money. Not much, but more than none. And he earned it. Now he is confronting the social world and benefiting from the ensuing conflict. Knowledge frequently results from knowing others, but when the man who is awakened has seen the uncarved block, others might be mastered by force, but to master oneself requires the Tao. He who has many material things may be described as rich, but he who knows he has enough and is at one with the Tao might have enough material things and have self-being as well. It took a long, oh, as long as my still anxious but self-transforming and determined visitor continues down his current path, he will become far more competent and accomplished, and it won't take long. But this will only be because he accepted his lowly state that was sufficiently grateful to take the first equally lowly step from it. That's a far preferable to wanting endlessly for the magical arrival of Godot. That's far preferable to arrogant, static, unchanging existence, while the demons of rage, resentment, and unlived life gather around. What shall I do when greed consumes me? Remember that it is truly better to give than to receive. This world is a form of sharing and trading. That's Rule 7 again, and not a treasure house for plundering. To give is to do what you can to make things better. The good people will respond to that and support it and imitate it and multiply it and return it and foster it so that everything improves and moves forward. What shall I do when I ruin my rivers? Seek for the living water and let it cleanse the earth. I found this question, as well as its answer, particularly unexpected. It seems most associated with Rule 6, set your house. Perhaps our environmental problems are not best construed technically. Maybe they're best considered psychologically. The more people sort themselves out, the more responsibility they will take for the world around them, and the more problems they will solve. It is better, proverbially, to rule your own spirit than to rule a city. It's easier to subdue an enemy without than one within. Maybe the environmental problem is ultimately spiritual. If we put ourselves in order, perhaps we will do the same for the world. Of course, what else would a psychologist think? The next two were associated with proper response to crisis and exhaustion. What shall I do when my enemy succeeds? Aim a little higher and be grateful for the lesson. Back to Matthew. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. That's chapter 5, verses 43 through 45. What does this mean? Learn from the success of your enemies. Listen, Rule 9, to their critiques so that you can glean from their opposition whatever fragments of wisdom you might incorporate to your betterment. Adopt as your ambition the creation of the world in which those who seek to work against you see the light and wake up and succeed, so that the better at which you are aiming, you can encompass them too. What shall I do when I'm tired and impatient? Gracefully accept an outstretched helping hand. This is something with a twofold meaning. It's an injunction first to note the reality of the limitations of individual being, and second to accept and be thankful for the support of others, family, friends, acquaintances, and strangers alike. Exhaustion and impatience are inevitable. This is too much to be done and too little time to do it in. But we don't have to strive alone, and there is nothing but good in distributing the responsibilities, cooperating in the efforts, and sharing the credit for the productive and meaningful work thereby undertaken. What shall I do with the fact of aging? Replace the potential of my youth with the accomplishments of my maturity. This harkens back to the discussion of friendship surrounding Rule 3, the story of Socrates' trial and death, which might be summarized as follows. A life lived thoroughly justifies its own limitations. The young man with nothing has his possibilities to set against the accomplishment of his elders. It's not clear that it's necessarily a bad deal for either. An aged man is but a paltry thing, wrote William Butler Yeats. A tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing, for every tatter in its mortal dress. What shall I do with my infant's death? Hold my other loved ones and heal their pain. It is necessary to be strong in the face of death, because death is intrinsic to life. It is for this reason that I tell my students, aim to be the person at your father's funeral that everyone in their grief and misery can rely upon. There's a worthy and noble ambition, strength in the face of adversary, that is very different from the wish for a life free of troubles. What shall I do in the next dire moment? Focus my attention on the next right move. The flood is coming. The flood is always coming. The apocalypse is always upon us. That's why the story of Noah is archetypical. Things fall apart. We stress that in the discussion surrounding Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. And the center cannot hold. When everything has become chaotic and uncertain, all that remains to guide you might be the character you constructed previously by aiming up and concentrating on the moment at hand. If you have failed in that, you will fail in the moments of crisis, and then God help you. That last set contained what I thought were the most difficult of all the questions I asked that night. The death of a child is perhaps the worst of catastrophes. Many relations fall in the aftermath of such a tragedy, but disillusion in the face of such horror is not inevitable, although it is understandable. I have seen people immensely strengthen their remaining family bonds when someone close to them has died. I have seen them turn to those who remained and redoubled their efforts to connect them and support them. Because of that, all regained at least some of what had been so terribly torn away by death. We must therefore commiserate in our grief. We must come together in the face of tragedy of existence. Our families can be the living room with a fireplace that is cozy and welcoming and warm while the storms of winter rage outside. The heightened knowledge of the fragility and the mortality produced by death can terrify, embitter, and separate. It can also awaken. It can remind those who grieve not to take the people who love them for granted. Once I did some chilling calculations regarding my parents who are in their 80s. It was an example of the hated arithmetic we encountered in discussion of Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. And I walked through the equations so that I would stay properly conscious. I see my mom and dad about twice a year. We generally spend several weeks together. We talk on the phone in the interim between visits. But the life expectancy of people in their 80s is under 10 years. That means I am unlikely to see my parents, if I am fortunate, fewer than 20 more times. That's a terrible thing to know. But knowing it puts a stop to my taking those opportunities for granted. The next set of questions and answers had to do with the development of character. What shall I say to a faithless brother? The king of the damned is a poor judge of being. It is my firm belief that the best ways to fix the world, a handyman's dream if there ever was one, is to fix yourself, as we discussed in Rule 6. Anything else is presumptuous. Anything else risks harm stemming from your ignorance and lack of skill. But that's okay. There's plenty to do right where you are. After all, your specific personal faults detrimentally affect the world. Detrimentally affect the world. Your conscious, voluntary aims, because no other word really works, makes things worse than they have to be. Your inaction, inertia, and cynicism removes from the world that part of you that could learn to quell suffering and make peace. That's not good. There are endless reactions to despair of the world and to become angry and resentful and seek revenge. Failure to make the proper sacrifices, failure to reveal yourself, failure to live and to tell the truth, all that weakens you. It is in that weakened state that you will be unable to thrive in the world, and you will be of no benefit to yourself or to others. You will fail and suffer stupidly, and that will corrupt your soul. How could it be otherwise? Life is hard enough when the going is well, but when it's going badly, and I have learned through the painful experience that nothing is going so badly that it can't be made worse. This is why hell is a bottomless pit. This is why hell is associated with that aforementioned sin. In the most awful of cases, the terrible suffering of unfortunate souls becomes attributable by their own judgment to mistakes that they knowingly made in the past. Acts of betrayal, deception, cruelty, carelessness, cowardice, and most commonly of all, willful blindness. To suffer terribly and to know yourself as the cause, that is hell. And once in hell, it is very easy to curse being itself. And no wonder. But it's not justifiable. And that's why the king of the damned is a poor judge of being. How do you build yourself into someone on whom you can rely in the best of times and the worst, in peace and in war? How do you build for yourself the kind of character that will not ally itself in its suffering and misery to all who dwell in hell? The questions and answers continued, all pertinent in one way or another to the rules I have outlined in this book. What shall I do to strengthen my spirit? Do not tell lies or do what you despise. What shall I do to ennoble my body? Use it only in the service of my soul. What shall I do with the most difficult questions? Consider them the gateway to the path of life. What shall I do with the poor man's plight? Strive through the right examples to lift his broken heart. What shall I do when the great crowd beckons? Stand tall and utter my broken truths. And that was that. I still have my pen of light. I haven't written anything with it since. Maybe I will again when the mood strikes and something wells up from deep below. But even if I don't, it helped me find the words to properly close this book. I hope that my writing has proved useful to you. I hope it revealed things you knew that you did not know you knew. I hope the ancient wisdom I discussed provides you with strength. I hope it brightens the spark within you. I hope you can straighten up, sort out your family, and bring peace and prosperity to your community. I hope, in accordance with Rule 11, do not bother children while they are skateboarding, that you strengthen and encourage those who are committed to your care instead of protecting them to the point of weakness. I wish you all the best and hope that you can wish the best for others. What will you write with your pen of light? And that is the actual end of the book. He then goes on with acknowledgments for a page and a half, and then we have the end notes from all the different highlighted notes throughout the book. So, what did you all think? What have you all learned as a result of doing this book club? You know, I want to hear about how this has helped you, as he said at the end. You know, he has all these hopes for us, having read his book, and I want to know if any of those things have come to pass. Latin Patriot said, I've also heard a saying, no good deed goes unpunished. Yes, there is that. If Avid says, you need me, how does one accomplish that? I don't know. That one's a tough one. Shaman says, we never really know what the divine plan is. It sure seems. That's true. Although, to a certain extent, you can figure out, like, I'm going through a course right now, you know, what does God want from me, sort of thing. And I'm curious as to how it's going to play out. Right now, it kind of reads like, you know, a sales pitch, but there might be some actually really good stuff in there. And I'm going to see. Kevin says, Machiavelli had a sad but not false view of the world. I think he was the first nihilist who had purpose in his nihilism before Nietzsche wrote his words. If God says you need me, how does one accomplish that? Shaman says, super job, Pam. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so glad that I've had you guys along on this journey. Latin Patriot said, I've learned that life is hard when it's easy and harder when things go bad, and that's probably why some people learn how to use and manipulate others for their benefit. Yeah, well, that's short-sighted, you know. To use other people to your own benefit and not to the benefit of everyone around you. not to the benefit of the world itself is extremely selfish and short-sighted, because you know if and when they wise up, you know they'll want revenge and other things like that. They'll want to sabotage and all sorts of terrible things that can manifest. It's better to work with people and make relationships that you can work with people over a long period of time rather than just what you can get in the moment. I mean, that's the whole, do what is worthwhile and not what is expedient. So, Shaman says, well, we have learned there are so many truths to be seen and truths on how we see them. Yes, that is very true. That is very true. I've learned that I still have a lot of work to do on myself. I've done a lot of work on myself, but I still have a lot more, and I could be a better person in service to others and in service to the world and in service to being and all these other things by working on myself. It's not just for my own benefit, but it's for the betterment of everyone. If I can act in a good and right manner when things are falling apart, and it may not be like catastrophe in my life. It may just be like I'm upset about the way this person is going about things. Well, maybe I need to work on myself more and not be so irritated with them, but learn how I can better work with them and avoid pitfalls and all this other good stuff. I still have a lot of growing to do at my age. Still got a lot of growing. So, Floki is here. Welcome. We just finished the book. You missed it all. So, Latin Patriot says people have killed for resources, wars for resources. Yes. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's no doubt that that's happened. But usually it's from all sorts of reasons. I mean, there's no simple reason that countries go to war. It usually takes, a famine, something, when people are desperate and struggling, a lot of times that'll result in wars and things like that. But the world is not a place of fairy tales where good triumphs over evil all the time. It's just not that. And so I think what it is that, as Jordan says, it's easy to make a bad situation worse. Very easy to do that. It's difficult, but worthwhile to make a bad situation better. There's always going to be tragedy. There's always going to be catastrophe and things like that. And we can make it worse with our own behavior. Easily, way too easily. But we can also make it better. And I think that's the whole lesson is that, we don't have anything better to do than to try to make things better. I mean, tell me a more worthy aim than to make things the best that they could be. So, yeah. That was the book. And we got 6 more minutes. So, oh my gosh. There must be mildew or something because of the rain, because I'm getting stuffed up. But I mean, this was a great experience. I really enjoyed doing this. I really enjoyed, all the insights that you all raised, everything that you guys brought to the table, the fun we had, the laughs we had, the relationships we've built, the people that have been brought back to their faith. That just was huge. I never thought that doing this would return people to their faith. It's a huge thing. This little circle of friends of ours, the ripples going outward from us as a group is pretty spectacular. you know um and I just can't wait to see I can, but I want to see what's going to come down the line, like in 4 years time, and in 8 years time, in 15 years time. What are we going to accomplish as a result of doing this simple little book study? I think the possibilities are endless, and that it's going to be amazing. So Latin Patriot says, in California, the powers that be have been killing farming, and I believe it's completely intentional to bankrupt the farmers so that they will lose their land and powers, and then will then own control. Yeah, you're on a negative mood, aren't you, tonight, Latin? Yeah, there are a lot of bad things going on all over the place. People are dying in pain when they don't need to. Children are not being given pain relieving medicines because of an overblown and unscientific view of addiction. Addicts are not being allowed to have the treatment that could, maintain them as sober individuals, and let them have a life and a family and all of that. There's all sorts of terrible things going on, but there are also a lot of people fighting really, really hard on the other side to make things right. So, in that case, Shaman says we can live by good, higher moral standards for ourselves. We can do that. I can't stop a war, but I can affect change in my own way of living and being. Oh, sorry, doggies. Oh, I gotta put that down. And yeah, that's the thing. It's like, few of us are in a position to stop a war, but we can affect ourselves, the people around us, our neighborhood beyond that. Our goodness is like a drop in the pond, and it ripples outward. Kevin says, I like that, Shaman. Yeah, so do I. Shaman says, yes, Pam, this group affected much positive change. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I think. I think we've all found a way to improve ourselves and the world around us. And that's huge. That's huge to know that, and to have that ability, and then to go out and try and do it, to really feel empowered, to make the world a better place. Latin says, we have a well and water is running out. Sorry, guys, it's extremely expensive to get connected to a city. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is hard. And Latin says, trying to see the positive. Well, just it's the same situation, with Michaela, where that was a tragic and terrible situation that she went through. And sometimes you just have to, not take your thoughts away from the situation and just try and notice the good around you. The growing of a flower in the cracks of the sidewalk. Life will spring up in the most amazingly difficult conditions. So, Shaman says, yes, I've always thought that way too. The ripples of the pond. Well said, Pam. Oh, thank you. So, Yeah, I'm so sorry you're in that situation, Latin. That's you learn quickly. Water is life. You know, when the water is running out. I've lived without plumbing, not even a well. You know, the water we had was the water we had in the buckets that we got from the water truck, and you try and spare it as much as possible. You know, you save your gray water, that kind of thing, and it's just it's a hard way to be out in the desert, things like that. So I do wish and pray for the return of the water for you. Um, and I hope you get through that. You know, just be strong. Be strong. Um, all I can do is encourage you to, to carry on. Have that tenacity. Yes, it's a horrible situation. Could be worse. Could always be worse. And just, keep moving in the direction that will see you through. So, um, Lauren says, yeah, we have a well too. It comes from a lake that is deep underground. Yep. Latin says, not enough rain, I presume. Not sure how aquifers replenish. Well, and if you're in California, the way that the aquifers are constructed is really strange. I mean, like the dry lakes that they created because they pumped all the water out of it. So, um, yeah, pray a lot for rain. We were lucky that we got rain today. Kevin says, rain, but farmers have drilling for water and it can drain other wells. Yeah, yeah. I mean, all of this stuff is interconnected and tough and everything like that. But just keep your spirits up, keep treading forward. Encourage other people to do the same. To keep the faith and just try and get through it as best you can. As best you can. Now, it's a bad situation, but it could be made into absolute hell. Were you not there to make it better? So keep your chin up, and I hope things are better for you soon. I will definitely put you in my prayers. Um, Latin says, my mother ignored the warnings when I was a child. Over 25 years or more, she apologized to me now. How can parents be so against their children? She said, because she wasn't saved, was a zombie. Yeah, well, I can understand that. My mother was much the same way. Lauren said, we finally got rain there too. Good, good. I'm glad you guys haven't had it in a long time. And so, Shaman says situations change into and can change out of. Yep, stay strong and sending blessings. Um, Churches have been shipping in bottled water. Yep, yep, and the heat that was out there. Oh my gosh! But anyway, we're over time. Thank you again, everybody, for being with me on this journey. Thank you for joining me every night, and we're gonna continue hopefully with the Bible study on Saturday. And we'll talk about another book to do next time. So I love you all and have a good rest of your night. You're very welcome, Latin. Bye.